Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here from BulldogMindset.com. Today I'm going to be answering a question that I got about how to apply the knowledge that you've learned. A lot of us Bulldogs, we are very adamant about reading books, about acquiring knowledge, and developing our skills, right? But there's a difference between having the knowledge and using it, right? And I think wisdom is probably the closest word that I could use to describe the application of knowledge versus just acquiring it. Dev Mountain is an industry-leading coding bootcamp teaching web development, iOS development, and UX design. Dev Mountain provides free housing for all of their full-time students. If you're looking to get into the tech industry, this is a great first step. Access www.devmountain.com or click the link in the video description for more info. So I got this question actually from Instagram. And which you can follow me on Instagram, by the way, if you haven't already, Bulldog Mindset on Instagram. And he says here, hey John, dropping a video idea. I've been gaining a lot of knowledge in the past years. Your content, mindset books, Stoicism, Seneca, 10X, etc. And I just caught myself not applying anything. I know how to get shit done and how to communicate, sell, etc. And my closed ones usually ask me for advice, but I'm realizing I don't practice what I preach. How do you actually commit to use what you've learned? Maybe for me, it's about not wanting bad enough something to apply all the techniques and effort, some kind of inner conflict. But I love your take on this. Thank you. So there's two types of education and there's two types of learning. Okay, and we need to have both of them in our lives, right? So the first type of learning is what I call practical, pragmatic learning that is necessary in order to achieve an objective or goal, okay? The second type of learning is more of the personal development, like becoming something transformative, mindset, principle transformative type of learning that is more of absorbing things and changing your worldview in interviews, but is not necessarily pragmatically, practically, directly applicable. Let's break this down a little bit further. So the first type of learning is going to be the things that you want to be able to do something, right? I always say when you're trying to, quote, learn something specifically, you should say, I want to learn X so I can do Y. And you need to have a why. It's important to have a why, right? There's no point learning X without a why. Okay, and you can remember that because you always should ask yourself, why? Why do I want to learn this? For example, let's say that I want to build a website. I need to learn how to build a website so that I can have the website. I might need to learn some HTML or some WordPress skills or about web hosting and all of these things in order to build a website. A lot of people though, what they'll do with their learning is they'll just start learning stuff that should be used for practical application, right? If you start looking at and reading tutorials on HTML and on website building on WordPress and all this stuff, you're acquiring all this knowledge, but it's not very useful to you because you're not applying the knowledge because you don't have any reason to apply the knowledge. And so at some later date in the future, you might ask yourself, well, I learned all this stuff, but I never applied the knowledge. Why not? And it's going to be because you didn't use it when you needed it. And so you're going to lose it. You're going to forget it. It's not going to make sense to you. And you're not in the habit of doing that. But there's going to be certain things in life that when you're trying to accomplish them, you're going to specifically go and seek out that knowledge, those books, okay, those resources, and you're going to learn the thing, the X, so you can do Y. Now, this could apply to just, pragmatic, practical things. It could also apply to personal development, to productivity, to having the Bulldog Mindset. If you're trying to learn how to get your body in shape, to lift weights, if you're trying to learn how to be more productive, right, and you want to implement a system, right, something like, we could take an example of a really good book by Grant Cardone called the 10X Rule, okay? Let's take that as an example. This could apply to either styles of learning, but the 10X Rule basically says that you should 10X your goals, 10X the amount of effort that you put in or that you estimate in order to achieve that goal. It's going to take 10x more work than you expect. So you start doing that. If you really wanted to pragmatically apply that to your life, right? Because you wanted to start to develop that skill in order to achieve your goals of 10xing things, then you could read that book and you could practically, you could gain that knowledge to help you achieve your goals, and you could practically apply that and implement that, specifically right away in order to achieve that goal. Majority of your knowledge that you're going to use is going to be that type, right? And so just understand that that's the kind of things that you do. You learn X to do Y. Now that second type is what I call the knowledge that you're just going to absorb, that's going to change your worldview, that's going to change your inner beliefs, that's going to transform you. But it's like being a pickle. It's like being a cucumber in pickle brine, right? It's going to take time. It's input that you're taking in that you're not going to act on all of that stuff. You're just absorbing this information, and it's going to change your mindset. You can take any of these things and you could practically apply it and go through it and study the book and say, I want to implement this in my life step by step and do that, okay? Or you can read that book and absorb it and then move on and read another book. The same thing, like I said, with 10x rule. And you can read a bunch of books and just acquire this knowledge that's going to slowly be changing you and changing your life philosophy. Both of these ways of learning are valuable, right? The thing is that you can't always be just doing the first type where you're always learning X so you can do Y. When in general, that you need to change yourself and transform your mindset, right? A lot of this channel and the whole philosophy behind the Bulldog Mindset is developing this Bulldog Mindset, which is not something that you can just educate yourself on. To some degree, you've got to absorb this information. You can't just practice and train in some aspect, but you have to be transformed mentally, and that's going to require a lot of exposure to these ideas, these concepts. I'm not saying you don't take action on things. I'm just saying that there's a lot of knowledge that you're just going to absorb, and you're just going to trust that you're changing and growing by gaining that information, right? And even though it's not necessarily, you're not specifically practically applying it in all cases. With that said, okay, I just wanted to make that distinction first between the two types of education. There are times when you need to practically implement what you've learned, right? And there's a couple ways to do this, okay? One of them, a great one, is teaching. The more that you teach, okay, the more that you're going to take this knowledge that you have and you're going to put it out into the world, and it's going to internalize it for you and help you to utilize that in day-to-day life. The other thing that you can do is, like I said, is you can start taking some of these pieces of the information that you're getting and from the second style of learning and convert it over to the first by having specific goals and objectives. So you can actually take something that you've learned that's kind of amorphous, that you didn't necessarily learn to for any specific purpose, and you can repurpose that once you've been exposed to that. Sometimes you don't know what's out there until you hear about it. You could take principles like the 10x rule. You could take the stuff in Awaken the Giant Within. You could take the visualization exercises from books like Psycho-Cybernetics, okay? You could take even the mindset type of exercises from Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, right? There's a lot of different things that you could do or Seneca's, right? One way that I'm doing that is you can check out, I've got a whole playlist on Seneca's letters, right? So I'm reading the letters, I'm giving commentary on them, so I'm reinforcing some of these ideas, but you could take some of these ideas and you could start applying them specifically to your life, to your morning routine. Don't worry so much about this. If you keep on being the pickle, the cucumber in the pickle brine, you're eventually going to become the pickle. If you keep absorbing information and mindset, if you keep watching this channel, reading books that are going to lift you up and talk about Stoic philosophy and things that are going to help you develop the Bulldog Mindset, you're eventually going to become a bulldog, right? It's going to happen. Now, you're going to have to take action, of course, but you'll be inspired more to action and you'll commit more to that action as you're transforming, because the mindset is the first important thing that is required in order for you to make actual changes. Any other changes that you make without transforming yourself, without changing your nature, are going to be temporary in nature, and you'll eventually snap back like a rubber band and fall into your old habits, because you can only do but what you are, right? So you have to change who you are, what you are, as long as you're on the path, as long as you're continuing to be on this path, on personal development, on developing this Bulldog mindset. If you're reading these things, if you're absorbing this information, and you're trying to practically apply as much as possible in your life, right? Consciously working on different things, right? You can't work on it all at the same time. It's great to be listening to a lot of information, doing a lot of the second type of learning, right? But you have specific first type of learning things that you're doing while you're doing that, and you pick out projects. I do this all the time. I'm always working on some attribute of personal development specifically, and then the rest of it in the broad sense of it, of just gaining that knowledge, and hopefully it gets converted to wisdom automatically over time. But you got to have something that you're working on, and then that general knowledge that you're bringing in. And you don't worry. You just know that this stuff is going to change you and change your life, and that you're going to be practically working towards your goals. And in fact, a lot of times this general knowledge, the second category of non-specific stuff that you're learning, gives you ideas of what you want to work on of the first type, and then you can pick them out, and then you can start working on those things specifically. So don't worry too much. Don't get too stressed out about this shit. Just make sure that you are taking action. If you're taking action in your life, if you're working on areas of your life, then don't worry about applying every single thing that you learn. I read a ton of books, and I can't apply it all, but I trust that it's going to be there. I trust that it's changing me, and I know that it has. And I specifically pick out things that I want to work on when I want to work on them, and then I might go back and reread books and things like that, or pick out the parts that I need to in order to get the education that I need to for that first type of practical, pragmatic learning. All right. That's all I got for you today, Bulldogs. If you haven't already, subscribe, hit the subscribe button, become a fucking Bulldog, and change your fucking life. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.